Hello, friends, and welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Seldin, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle Ngo, and I've seen almost nothing.
I'm Quinsey, and I have watched this show way too many times.
Usually, that's my line.
What's way too many times?
I have been watching this show since 1996, and I've done a rewatch every year since 2012.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
That's a lot of times.
Well, was it 2012 when it came streaming, right? So you could just...
No.
Oh, no, actually on the DVDs. Amazing.
And actually, I owned the first season of DVDs and the single DVD containing, at that time, all of the movies in college. So that would have been 2007-ish, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So I know the first season pretty well. I knew the first season very well at one point.
Yeah, I have a lot of TV shows like that. Like here's our requisite Buffy comment.
Yeah.
Like I knew season 3 of Buffy like the back of my hand for so many years before I really knew season 1 and season 2 very well. But like season 3 was where I really clued in, probably because of Faith. And it has the best villain. But outside of that,
it's a pretty solid season.
But yeah, so friends, we have a new guest.
Yay!
This is Ethan Quinsey.
Hello.
Ethan has been a friend of mine for more than this amount of years. Long time. I'm not going to do the math because it's going to make us both feel old.
So old.
I'm not going to do the math. But the Babylon 5 was actually on a list of shows that we were going to be watching. And I was like, Ethan, I'd love to have you on the show. I know it's a huge commitment because we're going to be, if you want to watch TV shows, feel free to just hop in with a movie or whatever. And Ethan was like, no, you've got Babylon 5 on here. I'm doing it.
I am in, and I am not turning back. We are doing this.
No, yeah, right. It became a contract between the both of us. Now, I actually haven't seen Babylon 5. I think I'd only seen maybe like half of the first episode. I don't even know, like 2 or 3 years ago. And for some reason, it just wasn't. It was like a really important part of science fiction culture. And it just never. I don't know if it was on at a weird time, if I just never watched it. For some reason, I just never watched it while it was on, which is weird for me personally.
It tended, when it was on the air, it did not get great time slots. My recollection of when it was on the air is a little fuzzy because I was of an age younger than now.
Years old.
Years old. Prior to high school. And it changed stations at least once. So it changed broadcast networks and that did not do great things for the ratings. And
Wait, when did that happen?
I feel like
between what 2 seasons?
So 4 and 5.
Oh, okay. All right.
Season 4, this might be spoilery. Season 4 is when we get to it is going to feel really, really rushed and really crammed because it was plotted as a 5-year story arc. And then signs pointed to the show getting canned after the 4th season. Mm-hmm. So they crammed in a bunch of stuff that was supposed to go into season 5. And
just in case they got canceled.
Just in case they wanted to get the whole overarching story told. They actually filmed the series finale.
Oh, wow.
During that time. And then they were able to hold back with it till the next year. But they had changed networks at that point, and there was a lot of cast turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things get weird. I can see how even just in these first 3 episodes, you can almost end up, okay, you are telling like 3 or 4 stories at once, which is a pretty standard, relatively speaking, for science fiction shows of the time, that you have like your A plot, your B plot, your C plot sort of all running together. I can only imagine what that becomes once it becomes like manic energy. Get out the information, get it out now.
Well, also it was unique. It was genuinely, it was a space opera, but it was a space opera, not like Star Wars, which is also a classic space opera with lots of, high values and not a lot of complication. Mm-hmm. That was, so it's almost like I like to call Star Wars a very serious Gilbert and Sullivan.
I mean, you're not wrong.
It's almost Pirates of Penzance, but taken very seriously. And then you have Babylon 5, which is space opera in the more classic sense, where you are telling a long overarching story, and it's very, very sincere. They are doing something with their platform. They are saying things. And it gets very muddy in places because televised science fiction in the early 90s, it was stuff like Star Trek. You had TNG. Deep Space Nine came out at the same time as Babylon 5, which...
I was going to say, I feel like that was like they were not dueling because that's not really what they were doing. But like, I feel like they were very close.
They were dueling.
Oh, okay, cool.
I was going to say, I mean, two shows, both space operas, both take place on a station versus a ship.
The number of similarities,
I mean,
are probably not coincidental. I believe, and I could be misremembering this, so I have no citations, but I believe Straczynski, who was the creator and showrunner, I believe he pitched this idea to
Paramount
first. And they turned him down. And then he went to, insert name of studio here, Warner Brothers. He went to Warner Brothers. And they took it. And then right around the same time, in this first episode where you have, I don't know, do we go into like a synopsis of the first episode, or do we just talk about it?
yeah, we can absolutely do a synopsis. Do you want to do one on the fly or...
I can read it out of the Lurker's Guide, which is less of a synopsis and more of a broad overview.
Yeah,
Oh, no, I love that. Oh, yeah. And friends, if you want to watch along with us, we watched Babylon 5 Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3.
So Episode 1 is Midnight on the Firing Line. It is not the pilot episode. I had suggested that we not watch the pilot episode because it was re-edited when the show moved from, I think it was UPN or a UPN-like station, moved from there to TNT after Season 4. And Straczynski had the pilot movie re-edited to help catch people up who might be new to the show on its new station. And there's a massive, massive spoiler right in the middle.
Amazing.
Nobody thought we'd still be talking about this thing 20 odd years later. 30 years later. God help me.
Well, but like pilots are also just complicated in general. Danielle and I have talked a lot about pilots on the show, and it's, it becomes, I appreciate the heads up that like we should not have watched it because it would have, spoiled a big giant thing.
I will say, but the thing is, the pilot is canon. It is 110% canon. You're going to want to watch it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for right now, there are things that you're not allowed to know.
Fair.
Secrets.
So many secrets. The only things about the pilot that aren't canon are some of the makeup and some of the costumes. I am thinking of a very particular plaid sport jacket that should not have been there.
Oh my gosh.
But
I love that.
It's a real, we just grabbed whatever on the rack looked slightly alien and
then put it on a human.
yeah.
Yeah. So it just looked like a random car salesman wandering through the Zocalo.
What Jim Henson vibe. What a Jim Henson vibe that is.
There are surprisingly few puppets in this show. It's not Farscape.
I was a little sad about that.
We do get the one. We do get the one giant mantis puppet.
The giant bug.
That's
oh
the
my
giant
god,
bug.
I love the giant bug.
I love the giant bug.
Yes, who is like the sleazy Resident Evil 4 merchant of the show. What are you buying? But Midnight on the Firing Line, which is the first proper episode, you open with, and you have the Narns, who are a reptilian species, and you have the Centauri, who are basically, if you took the Roman Empire and the French court of King Louis XIV, and you combined them and shot the baby into space and said, go make an empire. That's the Centauri.
Something republic.
This great Centauri republic. Yes.
Yeah.
My terrible Lando Malari impression, or as I lovingly refer to him as peacock-haired space Dracula.
Nice.
I mean,
Well, no, sorry, he's not Dracula. Peacock-haired space Bela Lugosi.
I just specifically Bella
Lugosi. Yeah. Just I don't know why they decided it's like so you have the French court, the Sun King's court, plus the Roman Empire, and they have a Romanian accent for some reason.
Yeah.
Choices were made.
It almost threw me. It's interesting when you were talking about like the serious space opera, because I feel like if it wasn't serious, it's so easy to laugh at.
It's so over the top.
It's so over the top, and you don't think, like, that was my first impression watching it, was I was like, oh, thank God they made him like a real character with like wants and needs and flaws, and like who is super serious like the second scene you see him in, and definitely not a joke. Like, thank God you open on this extremely tense, like something is on fire scenario, because man, it could have gotten so Looney Tunes so fast.
Looney Tunes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's like, and the show opens with a Centauri like science or agricultural base being attacked by an unknown enemy, and smash cut to Londo in a casino trying to hit up the local chiefs of security for gambling money.
Absolutely.
So that is what that they have a thing. They have it not a that kind of thing, but they have a thing. Don't
they?
That depends.
Depends on which fix you're reading at the time.
Basically, yes. I mean, you find out later.
Who are we talking about right now? Garibaldi.
So
Garibaldi.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Michael
I was going to say, I wanted to
Chief
make
of
sure
Security.
I had the right track. I was on the right track and I was understanding.
Yes.
I think that Garibaldi has a thing with everyone. Like, I think that is simply Garibaldi's thing. But that's my read on Garibaldi only 3 episodes in.
I feel like the other thing you have to know about the show is that a lot of the core cast has passed away.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. And Michael Garibaldi's actor, Jerry Doyle, would have hated that comment so much.
Oh, no!
The thing he was doing before he died was being a talking head on like a Republican podcast.
Oh.
Which the character of Garibaldi would also have really hated.
My new favorite human, in a very weird, specific way, because it's like he feels like the quote unquote heart character, like he feels like the Sokka or the Xander or the whatever, but he's improved on it so much, even for the 90s, that I can't even look at it that way. Like the fact that he approaches multiple women to be like, I would like to invite you to my place to show you my second favorite thing. And his second favorite thing is Looney Tunes, which I'm assuming is what sparked that. And it's like, I can't. I was unprepared for the non-sexistness of a dude called Garibaldi. Absolutely unprepared. I was thrown for a complete loop.
Or a cop named Garibaldi.
Yeah, exactly. The humans on the space station are just space cops. And I'm like, oh no, we've done it. We circled back around to propaganda. We did it.
But maybe we'll break out of that pattern, as things continue.
Yeah. Well, I do like in the first episode how the president of Earth is like, you can't just be space cops. And I'm like, can't they? I was like, you're not here, buddy.
That wasn't the president. That was one of the senators. But the point still stands.
Oh, no. Yeah. Going out for re-election in an election year. Yeah. You guys can't just be space cops. And I'm just like,
Well, that's actually like the C plot of the episode, is that there is a planetary presidential election happening on Earth. And I really love, so you have the command staff of Babylon 5. So you have the commander, who is Jeffrey Sinclair, who is very, in this first, you don't get a lot of personality from him in the very first episode. He is in charge. Mm-hmm. And you have Commander Susan Ivanova, who is the first officer.
My fave.
She is, I'll come back to her in a minute. I have things to say about Susan. Also a fave. Michael Garibaldi, who is Chief of Security. Mm-hmm. And that is actually it for the command staff in the first episode.
Right.
And then you have, for other humans, you have Talia Winters, who is a commercial telepath we have telepaths in Babylon 5.
A licensed telepath.
commercial telepath. and this is where you get your first hints of how telepaths are treated on Earth. Mm-hmm. Because they are all under control of an organization called the Psi Corps. Mm-hmm. PSICORPS.
Don't worry about it. I would have gotten it wrong.
Corps is a toughie.
Corps is a toughie. So the interesting thing to me about Susan Ivanova and Talia Winters is that neither of these characters are present in the pilot.
Oh, interesting.
But they're also not. They weren't simply recast. Like these characters are not present. Not just these actresses. These characters are not present in the pilot. So what Straczynski did for this entire show was that he created trapdoor exits for all of the B5 regulars. Mm-hmm. He wrote exit strategies for all of the regulars in case a cast member needed to leave the show.
Oh, that's great.
And this actually ends up happening a couple of times.
Yeah.
So the characters that...
It's so hard to do that with a core cast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In the pilot, the character that Ivanova replaced was named, I believe her name was Laurel Takashima. And I can't remember I don't remember why the actress left. She might have just decided it wasn't a good fit. I believe the reason the character left was just because she didn't like the assignment. Which is fair. There's a whole sort of assassination attempt plot going on in the pilot. That's a bit rough.
Yeah, fair. That, by the way, that is the actress that I was like, oh no, I'm really excited to see her in it. Oh,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Well, we'll see her when we get around to watching the pilot,
Yes. Correct.
At the recommended hour.
I'm super glad that she was in it for a hot second. Absolutely.
She does a good job for the hot second that she's in it. And then
Tamlin Tamita,
yes,
by the way, is the actress's name, but she's such a good. She's in the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender currently, that I'm currently obsessed with, and she's amazing. She was all over the '90s stuff too, so
that's true.
It's great that she was like. It honestly, even if it only was like 1 or 2 episodes, I'm just glad she was getting the work.
I don't think she was going to be well used. I think she probably got the impression she wasn't going to be well utilized. Mm-hmm. She certainly was not. She didn't have a lot to do in the pilot.
I mean, that's fair.
But she did a good job.
Yeah. I get the impression of just like, especially on a show like this, it's unless you're like interwoven in the, fabric of the blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I feel like it's, you have to be really careful, especially with Asian actors at the time and even now, just making sure that they're not just like window dressing, like that they're actually, like an Ivanova being like, it's, as you mentioned, I think off the pod while we were preparing for the season of like deeply, strongly Russian, strongly Jewish, like, and you have to still have that without othering it.
Yeah, and Susan ends up being a really personal character for Joe Straczynski in a way that I don't know if Laurel Takashima would have been. Mm-hmm. For exactly that reason.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and then Talia replaced a character, another commercial telepath named Lita Alexander. And that actress her name was Patricia Tallman. And the fun thing about the backdoor exits, instead of just replacing people, is that Lita comes back later.
Ah,
love that.
Lita comes back and becomes extremely relevant. So that's a lot of fun. But the whole thing about Susan this was leading up to is that the things that we find out about Susan in this first episode, I do not believe they were part of Commander Takashima's story. So this is all completely new.
Mm-hmm. I do kind of like that they throw us in the middle of like a normal day on, because even Deep Space Nine had like a whole thing about how Cisco is the chosen one, like immediately.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, at least we have like like this is literally just a normal day. Like there's a fire happening halfway across the galaxy. We've got pirates over here. We've got an election back on Earth, and we're just kind of a busy space station. We've got day that ends in Y. You know,
a bunch of the diplomatic staff are at each other's throats again. What are we having for dinner?
What are we having for dinner?
Yeah.
I do love that the show, not to totally cut to the end of the episode, but like I do love that it ends with Susan still messaging the commander.
Shit just never stops.
Commander.
Excuse me.
Commander.
Stuff just never stops. Commander.
It's like just as he turns off his light.
Yeah.
It's just such a good establishing of like,
yeah.
Yep. It's just rapid fire. Like, just keep it moving.
Which is since we were talking about Deep Space Nine, that's a very different vibe from Deep Space Nine, which is, you know.
No, Deep Space Nine, you got the feeling like people breathed. Like they just took a breath like, wasn't there an entire episode that was literally just baseball? Like them playing baseball on the holodeck?
Yes. That was like 7th season episode, I think.
Something like that.
And things were getting very silly.
It was the version of their beach episode.
It was either, it might have even still been during the Dominion War.
Yeah, like Starfleet's at war, whatever. But like we're playing baseball today. Everybody join me on the diamond. Yep.
But it's like, you have the actual station of Deep Space Nine, which is this former Cardassian mining operation. It's and you have Bajorans now controlling the mining operation, and it's a joint thing with Starfleet, and it's all very fraught and tense. Mm-hmm. But it's also like a commercial center.
Yeah.
But we don't see a lot of the commerce except when we're in the bar or in the gay tailor's office, the gay tailor shop or the Klingon restaurant, You get a little bit.
It's all quarks all the time.
All quarks all the time. Or you're in the sex holodecks, the holosuites.
The holosex.
The holosex. But then you get something like Babylon 5, which is just, it's you get it all in the opening, the very long descriptive opening crawl, the very portentous opening monologue.
I have so many questions
about the opening monologue.
Yes, I'll try to keep it to a minimum because I'm sure some of it is like spoilery. Maybe they get to it, maybe they don't. And feel free, Ethan, to be like, they do touch on that or they don't. You don't even have to explain. Sure. It boils down to pretty much 2 or 3 questions in this, like, I don't even know how long it is. 45 second, I want to say. I'll time it when we watch the next few episodes. It's long, but at least it's not 400%, which was Almost Human. The pilot for Almost Human was like, we're in the year blah, 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 and crime is 400% worse.
So ridiculous.
So the police have to try to keep up. And so we kept trying to figure out which part was the 400%.
Right.
Questions about the monologue.
So yes, so I have a couple of questions about the opening monologue. The first one being, we are in the 3rd era of man. It says something like that.
3rd age of mankind.
The 3rd age. Do we ever find out the other ages, or do they just kind of hand wave it?
I think we find out, sort of, kind of. I think it has to do with like, this is like the first age is like pre-telepath and the second age is post. I don't know. I think
war and peace.
War and peace. Okay, it is explained. It's not explained in a way that I actually remember. Because it's one of these. Okay, it's one of the little details that whenever it comes up, I don't actually internalize it because I'm just staring at the screen going, Joe, what do you mean none of this has anything to do with Lord of the Rings? The number of things. I'm sorry.
And then the 5th Army showed up. But you didn't actually introduce them. No, okay, so that's one question I have. The other question is, so Babylon 5 is a one of a series of Babylon stations that was meant to help promote peace. why is this the last one?
That's plot relevant.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Because I was like, that's suspicious.
That's bait.
I was like, and then I think there was also something else. Well, this is more of a commentary. It's not so much a question, but I thought it was very funny that we actually name a year, which is we were doing willy-nilly in the 90s, not understanding advances in technology at all. So my favorite thing is when they name a year, like it is 2258. And I'm like, why do you still have push button? Why are we still in the push button age? Why are your helmets still round?
I can retroactively give an idea of why we're still in the push button age.
Okay.
And it's because touchscreens suck. For practical applications, touchscreens suck. We need tactile feedback. Feedback.
I mean, I'm also sitting here with, like, as you said, there was Star Trek Next Generation, there was Deep Space Nine, like there was a lot of like move a finger over and something happens, you know, like not so much
conflict or virtual glass. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You just go like this and suddenly there's something up on the screen around you. So I also understand if they were trying to like stay away from copyright. That said, though, like the special effects in this show, I feel like they kind of hold up. Like there's a few things that I'm like, well, okay, that's obviously like two squares fighting in space.
Well, but you know.
But like
this show,
you know, like
was
for the
actually,
budget.
Yeah, this show was actually I want to say it was a little bit revolutionary for its heavy use of CGI. It didn't have a lot of practical space effects. And that is definitely why their costume budget suffered in points and places. Although I say that, and then we get to the episode with the third episode with the Centauri dancer.
Oh, with the dancer, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get there. But I love the special effects in this show, and they actually they've done some remastering. Not much, because I believe the show was actually shot in 3:4.
Oh, interesting.
Aspect.
Okay.
So there's not a lot they can do.
So like it doesn't make sense to letterbox it or anything. Like
they lose a lot. And again, I'm spitballing. This is I was traveling this weekend, so some of my research time got cut. There was one of the later movies, and it was made in. No, I'm not going to talk about that. So when we get later on, when we get to see more of the alien races and the species, that's kind of interchangeable. Get to see more of the alien cultures, more of the alien technology. My favorites, which we will eventually see, are the Minbari space vessels. Because they're so...
Oh, right, yeah, we haven't seen any of those.
We haven't seen any of those yet. We've seen the Narns and we've seen the Centauri. We've seen the Narns, which are just very heavy, brutalist-looking spaceships.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, just giant, thick V's in space.
Yeah. Which, you know, they, as we find out from Ambassador Jakar, the Centauri strip mined the Narn homeworld and enslaved the population for like 100 years. So Jakar's got a chip on his shoulder for very understandable reasons.
Yes.
And also their technology is heavy and clunky and practical and not pretty.
Yeah. It makes sense for character reasons, right? Yeah. Like, especially if you've been, you know, at war for so long, and even like having it sort of clunky and old fashioned just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think I need to circle back to what the episode was actually about. I forgot that part.
I mean, we can sort of, it comes down to like, you want to summarize everything that happens, and then inevitably you're like, now I've been talking for 3 hours.
Well, yes. So. No, I was just going to say okay, so the three plot lines in the first episode. Mysterious forces attack a Centauri colony and lie about it, and then we find out it was the Narns the whole time. Londo Mollari, who is the ambassador to the Centauri Republic stationed on Babylon 5, really, really wants his government to do something about this because his nephew was in charge of that colony's research facility. We never see that nephew again, by the way.
Oh, that's so sad.
Karn.
Poor Karn.
Karn held at gunpoint.
And we end the episode when that plotline of Londo deciding he's going to assassinate a fellow ambassador and then bumping into the station's resident telepath. She reads his mind by accident, because she's not supposed to do that, and tattles on him to the station security guard, who is his not gambling buddy, because Garibaldi does not gamble. And Garibaldi goes to stop him and says a very, very poignant thing, which is, I know how it feels. I know how it burns, but you can't do this. You can't do this. Not now and not here.
Yeah.
Which is very, very telling. He's like, if you're going to go and kill somebody, please do it off of my station.
Well, but I also just love that moment of like, you are on a station where everyone has been touched by a war that it feels like practically just ended. Mm-hmm. So like you're basically surrounded by veterans who understand the complicated issues of all of the things that are happening.
Oh, and that comes up.
Yeah, and I just love how it's in the first episode and it's played very sincere, but it also like we don't harp on it. Mm-mm. You know, it's like he sort of says this very telling thing about like, yeah, dude, I get it. I understand your anger. I completely sympathize. You can't. you know.
Also, I'm giving you an hour to get rid of all of your weapons because I will be searching your quarters.
Although I love that his gun is made of pieces from everything else. So he's like, yeah, no problem. I'll just take it all apart again.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, like it was part of like it was something in a standing lamp and like
and a vase and like
a wine carafe.
Yeah.
Londo does love his wine.
Does love his wine.
And then things like Garibaldi's sense of humor. When he says, you know, I would have killed you, but I'm glad I didn't have to because the paperwork's a pain in the butt. Which, as a government employee, I sympathize with.
Honestly, that's always my favorite joke. It never gets old. It's everywhere. Like it's in Good Omens.
Yep.
It's in a bunch of other places too. Of like, I'm not going to kill you. There'll be paperwork. Why would I? Why?
I feel like Michael and Crowley would get along. Like Garibaldi and Crowley.
Absolutely.
And then, okay, so that's plot. That's the A plot. The B plot is the telepath on the station has to go and register with the first officer of the station because of regulations. And Susan Ivanova, who is the commander, doesn't want anything to do with Talia Winters, who is the telepath. And it's a back and forth. And you find out, basically the reason is Susan's tragic backstory is revealed in the first episode.
Surprise! Yeah. Well, part of Susan's tragic backstory. We get even more.
The second part of Susan's tragic backstory comes in episode 3.
Yes.
Susan gets no breaks in the early parts of season 1. So we find out that telepaths in human society are very, very heavily regulated to the point where if you don't want to join
Psychor,
spoilers, if you don't want to join the spoilers, if you don't want to join, you can either be put in prison or you can be given mind-altering drugs. And that's what happened to Susan's mother. And Susan's mother is no longer living.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And Susan has not ever handled that, apparently. And she just cannot be having with the telepath.
Yeah.
Well, and also in that way that, like, she looks at this, you know, this telepath on her station in that very, like, oh, you drank the Kool-Aid.
Yes. That's exactly how it's written in my notes.
And that's exactly how it's written in the show. With the
right. Like, I think that she sees Winters as a victim of the system, right? Because Winters doesn't know any better. Did she say something like she was born into the Psychor or something like that? She
says she was raised by the Corps.
Raised by the Corps.
So if you're, world building bit here, if in the society, if you are born as a telepath, your talents can either manifest at puberty or they can be active when you're a baby. If you're born with your powers active, the Psychor will take you from your birth parents.
I gotcha.
So Talia does not know, never knew who her biological parents were. She was raised within the confines of the Psychor. She doesn't know anything else. Mm-hmm. So it is very raised by the raised by the commune, basically. Within the evangelical church, however you want to frame it.
Yeah, I get such like real British UK laws against homosexuality and how they were like, well, if we find you guilty of sodomy, you have this option of taking these really terrible drugs and like basically barely having a life. And like, that's all I could think about while I was watching that part. Yep. And I was just like, oh, yeah, I would probably look at that telepath as she drank the Kool-Aid also and just pray she has a come to not Jesus, come to space Jesus, come to metaphorical Jesus who has no religious significance. Uh-oh, I broke Ethan.
You broke me for a number of reasons, none of which I can say on this podcast.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But yes, so that is our B plot.
That's our B plot.
We unlock the tragic backstory, but the telepath actually helps us with the A plot.
Yes. Everything is very tightly woven together, except for the C plot. But the C plot becomes very important later in season 1. So the C plot is the presidential election. And it is.
Oh, I thought the C plot was the Raiders. Is that not the Raiders?
Raiders don't get attached to the Raiders. They are.
I have no attachment to the Raiders.
Raiders are Babylon 5's MacGuffin.
I think that all of the notes I have written for anything to do with the Raiders in this episode are just like space battle. Should Sinclair be out here? That's all I have written down.
It's a real captain. You can't come with us on away missions.
It's a very Captain Kirk. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
But yeah,
Picard, why are you sending the entire command team down to this very dangerous planet?
Send your first officer, if anything. What are you doing? Meanwhile, Ivanova is making sure that station stays in the sky, like the only one doing her job.
Making sure all of the flight plans are filed.
Yeah. Not to spend too much time on the Raiders, because I love that you described it as MacGuffin, because it does feel like a very much like, oh, if we have a problem we cannot solve, like, say, a conflict not only between two recently warring planets, but between two diplomats on our very small space station, relatively small space station. Oh, we're just going to capture one of these Raider ships, find a Narn. What would that even be?
Basically, it was a
soldier,
technical liaison.
Like a technical liaison for the weapons that they've obviously like had to show them how to use, and who also happens to handily have all those conversations that no, it was in fact an attack on this utterly peaceful civilization.
Yep.
Utterly peaceful Centauri-ruled civilian citizen planet.
Well, like quotes around peaceful, right? They're peaceful now, but it certainly... Yeah. But it certainly wasn't always that way.
Yeah. It's just, it puts a very suspiciously neat bow on what I'm sure is a much more, like, if you think about it a little too hard, is a much more complicated issue.
Yeah. But it tees up nicely, I think, into the next couple of episodes because, everything between the Narn and the Centauri simply continues. And I assume is going to be part of the overarching story here.
Oh, yes.
But yes, the election, which I thought was really very, having gone through some tumultuous elections, it felt very like water cooler. Who you voting for?
And I love Susan. So there are three main candidates. And I love Susan's comment. And I'm going to preface this by saying I have seen people calling this comment fatphobic. Your mileage may vary. I am a person of size. I am a fat person. I do not find this comment fatphobic, but again, that's not for me to tell you how to think. She says, basically she says that one of the candidates, she always believed that a leader should have a strong chin, strong jawline. She says that one of the candidates has no chin and his vice president has several. And she doesn't think that neither of those bode well.
But then I found out she was Russian, and I was like, aha.
And it makes so much more sense. That is a comment you expect from a Russian.
It was just like, right, so she's a Russian Jew. She's actually literally looking for a strong jaw. Like, I don't know how else to explain that to people. I I can see where people would think it was fat phobic. There's a thing about like, I would have been more offended had there been like pictures, had we been talking to these people, had there been like a visual aid to go along with statements. I think I would have read it differently. But like, as it was, it didn't come off that way to me. Again, mileage may vary. It's definitely a thing where it's like, it was also the 90s, and I'm like, I'm sure they just weren't thinking that far ahead.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's got that 90s. 93 shine?
93.
Where are we? 92?
92, 93.
1992 shine.
Early, like, very, white liberal science fiction politics.
Yeah. I mean, we still don't have good conversations about any of that these days. So
we do not.
Certainly not. I mean, as we've said in our podcast, anything pre 2016, we're still
barely.
But
Yeah, like we were talking about Almost Human, which was like 2008, and we were just like, oh no.
These are the early 2000s. Different time.
The aughts were a place and time. I'm just taking a look at my notes just to see if there's any.
Well, I have a couple of things in episode 1 that I can just save as my one more thing.
As your one more thing?
If we want to tee up to episodes 2 and 3. Because we should talk about them ASAP.
Episodes 2 and 3, absolutely. I just as a quick reminder, Ethan, there is like a one more thing segment, which you don't have to contribute to if we talked about everything, but ultimately it comes down to if the conversation like got away from us and it's like, oh no, wait, I really wanted to talk about this. We usually save all those for the end.
Okay.
I just want to take a real quick peek at my notes before we move on from episode 1. Oh, I don't know if I want to say it or if I want to save it as my one more thing. Oh no.
Save it.
I'm going to save it. I did write down VCR technology is so much more advanced with the enhance pause.
I mean, I did put enhance in all caps in my notes. Because it was a spectacular moment in episode 1.
Oh, and we do find out that Centauri have prophetic dreams about their death.
Yeah.
They do.
Is that the only type of prophetic dream they have? Again, you could be like spoilers, but like it just feels like
I don't think it's a spoiler. I believe that is the only common type of prophetic dream. At least it's the only one we hear of. There are, we do meet 1 or 2 characters later in the series who are more adept at that. They are more classed as like prophets or prophetesses.
Gotcha.
And then, this is not relevant to the show, but in one of the later movies that I'm very fond of, there is a moment of somebody saying, I had a dream about this moment. And it is not about his death. So,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I did have another moment during the council meeting. It feels like a trial, doesn't it?
Yes.
I did have a moment during their council meeting where I was like, why wouldn't Lando bring up the recording?
It's not Lando Calrissian.
Lando. Why wouldn't Lando bring up the recording he had of the attack?
Because they all have that recording.
But it like instantly, it's like an objection, Your Honor. We have this literal recording that is like, we're under attack, not we asked for you to come. Thank you so much, our liberators. Like, it literally would undo the, the at gunpoint video. It was driving me nuts. I was just like, I'm sorry. Why are we not talking about the video that literally was like, please contact Centauri Prime, we're under attack.
I mean, it's it's kind of like what Ambassador Delenn says in the council. It's like, it's a very he said sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Which is very...
I did actually, instead of MacGuffin Raiders, I wrote down MacGuffin Psychic.
Okay, the psychic is not a MacGuffin. Joy, I am going to take this opportunity to push us into episodes 2 and 3 because we have 45 minutes max. And so this absolutely has to happen.
Yes, ma'am.
I know.
Okay, episodes 2 and 3. Psychic, not a MacGuffin because she keeps coming back.
Doesn't roll off the tongue as well, though. But yes, no, you're right.
Okay, so
yes,
episode 2 stars W. Morgan Shepherd as the creepiest monster of the week the show will have.
Oh, really?
Well, maybe not, but he's definitely the most memorable to me.
I kind of love the Soul Hunter.
Soul Hunter is great.
Yes, the episode is
concept of a Soul Hunter, the whole thing.
Well, now
Doctor Who just
my
sorry, go ahead.
My fave is that now when the intro plays and it mentions and wanderers. And the image that goes by whenever it says and wanderers is a soul hunter.
Yeah.
Being especially creepy.
So creepy.
Yes, we finally actually learn Ambassador Dylan's name, which I don't think we got last episode.
No, I think she was
literally
just there.
wrote down Lady Alien.
Lady Alien with a bone on her head.
Who watches the Daffy Duck cartoon with
Who watches the
Garibaldi.
Daffy Duck cartoons.
Yes.
So, you know.
And is deeply confused by them. And by popcorn.
Yeah.
Does
And
not
by
know what to do with the
popcorn.
But like the Soul Hunter episode is so indicative of the kind of science fiction episode that I particularly like. Like it hits home a lot for me. Like you have a culture that, you know, white America, which I know is not what we're talking about. The Earthlings was white America, is like utterly unfamiliar with. Mm-hmm. And like they bring in this thing where it's like, well, this is our boogeyman.
Yeah.
And then you meet the boogeyman and it's like, oh, wait. No? Yes? Wait, this one, it basically is
exactly.
a boogeyman.
It's like, no, yes, kind of, because it turns out it's like a bait and switch where actually he is the boogeyman because he's not even supported by his own people. He's gone off the deep end, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I love when it's like, you know, I started mentioning like Doctor Who did something similar recently, but personally, I don't think they pulled it off nearly as well as Babylon 5 did, because they did start having these like people who show up when like disasters happen. And at first you think they're kind of like Grim Reaper type aliens, but then you meet them and it's like, no, actually we're helping to keep record of the people who have passed.
Oh.
Is that like, was that testimony?
I think so.
It was familiar.
Or has Doctor Who just done this 16 times?
I think it was probably. The one that I saw, I believe, was during the Jodie Whittaker series.
Okay, the one I saw was the.
It was
special.
It was like a. I mean, I know we were talking about A, B, C, D. Like this was a like F plot, you know, like, and it showed up at the last minute. Talk about MacGuffin, but it was like, you know, it was like part silence, part something else, where it was like there are these aliens who show up and we don't know about them, but like. I really like that one dude from this culture was like, oh, we don't claim him.
Yeah. But at the same time, like the reason they don't claim him is because he actively goes and hunts, right? Kills the people whose souls he would like to collect, right? But ultimately, the Minbari ambassador still wouldn't agree with anything that the soul hunters do, because part of what's going on is that the Minbari, at least my interpretation, tell me if I've got it wrong, is that they believe in reincarnation, right? So you can't just take a soul and lift it out of the cycle, because if you take a soul and you lift it out of the cycle, then you're just, you know, doing
you're damaging the rest of the culture.
That's exactly what's happening. And we find out, is this a spoiler? I will make it as anodyne as possible. We find out later that the Minbari believe that they have a finite number of souls within their culture.
I mean, honestly, and that's just like all the more reason to be like, absolutely not. You can't take our stuff.
Yeah. So you do get to a cool point in this episode where there isn't really a right or wrong, other than we all agree that the person killing other people should not do that, right? We're all going to agree on that, but beyond that,
yeah.
You know?
I mean, I do, and again, I love that it is sort of a question, right? Of just like, well, it just seems like you guys have a difference of opinion for the whatever, but it's like, or what if you just left the Minbari alone?
Please leave the Minbari alone. We find out a lot of interesting plot, like overarching plot things in this episode. Mm-hmm. So, we are introduced to Dr. Stephen Franklin, who is the final member of the command staff, who played by the late, wonderful Richard Biggs, who, I need to mention this for a friend of mine, was deaf in one ear.
Ah.
And I had a friend back in my active B5 fandom days who was also partially deaf, and Dr. Franklin was a real fave because of that. So shout out to Zan.
I love that.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yep. And two other things of note. We find out that poverty exists on Babylon 5.
Oh, yes, we meet the lurkers.
We meet the lurkers. We go to down below, which are as the name implies, the lower levels. Babylon 5 is a big cylinder of a station, and it's divided into levels. And down below is like all of the sectors of grays and browns that nobody wants. Mm-hmm. And the people who, at least the people who end up in down below, are people who come to Babylon 5 in search of work and then can't afford passage off the station. And so there is no any kind of supports. That's the thing that kind of surprises me now. It didn't occur to me as a kid. It surprises me now that there is no support structure in place for anybody who can't get off of a space station. But also, as an American, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like I need more information about the world in general before I can begin to understand that, because the only thing I know about this station so far is that it's the last of its kind. So, like, why is it the last of its kind? Is there nowhere else for people to go? Like, yeah. You're like, spoilers.
I mean, Earth exists. There is a functioning government. There are other planetary colonies. There are other places for these people to go. It's also a capitalist society, which is another thing to differentiate it from Star Trek. People need money to do things, and there's a finite number of jobs on a 5-mile station. The town I live in, the village I live in, is area-wise is larger than Babylon 5. And we have, like, my village is so small that the high school is combined with 2 other neighboring villages. So this place is small.
I'm so glad you explained why they were there, because that was going to be one of my questions of just like, how do you get like
a homeless population?
Yeah, like how do you get such a homeless population on basically a floating city? Yeah. Like, how does that happen?
Like a thing that's supposed to be a floating home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like they don't, but they don't have, you have to pay for your room on the
floating home in space.
Yep. You have to pay for your room on the room and board.
You have to pay for everything. You have to pay for your quarters. You have to pay for your apartment. I think there's probably, because you are in a pressurized cylinder, there's probably, although I can't confirm this, a payment. You have to pay like rent for oxygen, probably.
I would guess. I was like, anything you could pay for, I'm sure it's a thing. It's so interesting to me that it's, it feels, obviously it's different because people wouldn't be going there for this reason, but it reminds me of like the we don't have it in New York City, but there's a couple other cities. I think DC used to do this where like you could swipe something and get into a subway or an underground, and then you had to swipe again to get out.
Oh, yeah. And then it would cost different depending on, like the ticket would cost different amounts depending on where you were
traveling from. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I remember hearing a bunch of stories of just like, yeah, you just paid to basically just be down there. Mm-hmm. And then you just didn't leave because you didn't have anywhere else to go. Yep. And it feels like that in a weird way. Like it's this transient place where you're just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously on a much larger scale, because if you're traveling there for work, it's an entirely different dynamic. But I can really see, like, you hear that there are jobs and then you show up and there's no jobs and you literally can't afford to go home. Like, people pick up and move with with everything they have all the time.
Yeah.
Only to be like, well, I guess I'm living in squalor
guess
until
stuck.
Something improves.
And it's not a situation where, it's easier to... Not that it's easy now, but it's easier to buy a car now than it is to buy a little personal spacecraft that can take you from planet to planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is no just driving from Mars to Babylon 5.
Right.
And finding no work and driving back.
Yeah. It's like, well, we tried. And then you head home and it's like, oh, right. I sold my house and my car and my goat to get here.
My space goat.
My space goat. My space goat, Bessie. Oh, no, wait. That would be Space Cow, wouldn't it? Space Cow, Bessie.
Space goat would be like Nanny or something. Nanny.
Black Phillip. My space goat, Black Phillip. Shout out to the witch fans.
That's going to be the name of your personal little space car.
It might be the name of this episode, depending on how we go.
My space goat, Black Phillip. Yes. Most non sequitur. Okay. Oh, the really big thing. This episode, the Soul Hunter, when he is confronted by Sinclair, he says something. What does he say? He says, "They're using you."
Yes.
Yeah.
He says they're using you. And then
that she's Satai?
She is Satai. Satai Delenn of the Grey Council. And how and later when everything is done and Delenn is going to live, and she says when she's kind of semi-lucid, she looks up at Sinclair and says, "We were right about you." And later when Sinclair, everything is quiet and Sinclair is back in his quarters and he asks, Space Alexa, what does the word Satai mean to the Minbari? We find out that Satai is an honorific that is given to the members of of the Minbari ruling body. Meaning that Delenn is one of the leaders of her entire species.
Yep.
Which is insane.
What is she doing
I love the
here?
what are you doing here?
Yes. And yes. And that does become a question. That becomes a question.
I do like that she is one of the characters, even in the very first episode, even though we didn't learn her name, we instantly got a very good vibe from her. I don't know if it was just because Jakar was being so saccharine sweet about the fact that something had been attacked or something, but Delenn gives him this look that I'm just like, I feel like you deal with a lot of numbskulls all the time, and I don't know if you are used to just swallowing the words you want to say, because you looked like you had things to say. But no, I instantly liked her. I thought she was great. I didn't know her name until episode 2, but I thought she was great.
Delenn was a formative character for little tiny me.
The wee Ethan.
The wee baby Ethan. Yes, I'm glad you like her. She will.
Yeah.
She's gonna break hearts.
I'm really
absolutely.
excited. I'm actually really excited to see what they do with her. I think that if you were to ask me at the end of these 3 episodes, what are the 3 things you were most excited to find out more about? One of them is Delenn.
Good. And Joe's doing his job.
There was one other thing right at the end there that the doctor sort of said, and it was kind of a throwaway line, but for some reason I latched onto it, which was first of all, Sinclair comes to the hospital wing or whatever, the med bay. He looks weirdly delirious. And I don't know if this was a character choice. I don't know if he was just really happy about getting the bad guy or if he was just really happy that Delenn was safe. I don't know. But he I hadn't seen... Yeah, but I hadn't seen the commander smile in the last 2 episodes, and he smiled more than he had.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know whether this is just pilot shine or this show sort of coming into itself a little bit, but I feel like in the course of these 3 episodes, I saw 3 very different captains. It's wait, right? Who are you?
Commander.
But yes, Commander.
3 very different commanders, absolutely.
Not to skip ahead too much, but the scene where he literally rolls a deception check in episode 3, I was like, what's happening right now? What are you doing?
Yeah.
I had the same reaction, but that wasn't actually what I was originally talking about.
Sorry.
I just remembered that. But he's talking to the doctor, and the doctor says something because they're talking about the soul and what did you see? And I'm not even entirely sure what I saw. It's hard to explain. And the doctor literally says something don't say that too loud. They might lock you away. And I was like, oh, I see. We're still putting people in asylums for thinking that souls are real.
Right.
Well, yeah, he says they'll send you on a very long vacation or something like that.
On a long vacation.
But I mean, it's regressive, but also they are this is a military facility, so
no, absolutely, absolutely. It was also just a very 90s thing to say, and it's again, they said the year. They should never have said the year.
The nice thing about them having said the year was I do remember reading a lot of really good Babylon 5 original Star Trek series crossover fic back in the day because they take place basically continuously.
That is nice. I do like that.
Yeah.
I do like that for sure.
Just a lot of just some good temporal overlap there.
Yeah. And we end the episode with with the bad soul hunter being taken care of, his soul's disappearing, and we find that Delin has the soul orbs and is freeing the souls. We think they're being freed. We hope. They
seem happier once they're out. They change color from angry red to a nice cool blue.
They float away gently, right?
It's fair.
They play in some wind chimes before they leave.
She has a lot of wind chimes in her quarters. The thing I love
Which I really like because there's no wind.
Nope. The thing that I love about Delenn in this episode, which is really... So Delenn does play a big part in the pilot. And this is not a spoiler, but you do find out that she and Sinclair are friends.
Okay.
They've known each other for a while.
That explains his reactions in this episode a little more.
Yeah. He is very relieved to see her because she's a pal of his.
Yeah. I think we get that a little bit. I think he sort of mentions, like, I've known you for 2 years and you've never had a reaction like that. Yeah. And it's, it is interesting to kind of see her completely lose it and like nearly shoot somebody through a glass wall in a med bay.
Yeah.
I love that her first real outing is that she tries to murder somebody.
Yeah.
I love it so much. But the thing that I also love is just the actress. Again, the late Mira Furlan. She passed away, I want to say 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, recently.
So just recently.
Yeah, she, not COVID, actually. She had West Nile.
Oh, whoa.
West Nile virus, yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. I will go back to wonderful Central European. I'm gonna get her nationality wrong, and I really don't want to do that.
Croatian.
Thank you.
I looked it up real quick because I was like, I need to see her without the makeup to see if I recognize her from anything else. And the answer is like, kinda.
She didn't have much in the way of other success in the U.S. She did ended up doing a lot of character work, a lot of stage work. Absolutely stunning woman. And just an incredible actress. And that's the point I wanted to make. The switch.
Yeah.
When she doesn't, because initially when the Soul Hunter comes onto the station, the humans don't know, like the human staff don't know what this guy is. Mm-hmm. They've never seen an alien like him. And she says, well, I've seen a lot of aliens. Maybe I can identify.
I've done been around. I can help.
History
and she
check.
comes in. And she comes into the med lab. Very sort of full of compassion and curiosity and ready to be helpful. And then she sees through the glass of the isolation lab what the doctor's working on, and her entire face changes. And she goes from this very almost saintly, beatific sort of figure to just absolute rage and terror and grabbing Sinclair's sidearm and trying to shoot through the glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's marvelous.
Yeah. Really, really good.
I really liked this episode.
Does that cover my notes for this episode, I think?
Me too. I feel like of the three, I feel like it's a toss-up between 2 and 3, which one I liked more. I like them more for other reasons. Like, I really like the Londo specific episodes,
I was going to say, I liked episode 3, but I think part of the reason I liked episode 3 is because Londo really started winning me over. But in terms of the story and my overall experience of the 2 episodes, I really enjoyed episode 2. This is a good segue to episode 3.
This is an excellent segue to episode episode 3, Space Guys and Dolls.
Born to the Purple, which is such an insane title for a thing.
What is that?
Well, it's, purple is in human, at least Western history, Western European history. Purple is a sign of royalty. because it was really friggin' expensive for many centuries to create purple dye. And before we get too off track, I just want to say that this episode guest stars Clive Revell, or as I like to call him, not David Warner, as Trackus. Because I always think it's David Warner. And David Warner is not in this episode. He's in a later episode.
It's I had to look him up because he looked so familiar even under all the makeup. And I was like, I don't actually know who you are.
He just has one of those voices and one of those faces. Yeah. And he's not even British. He's from New Zealand.
Oh, interesting. So
it's like he's
touted as like a British actor, but I think that's just because people didn't know how to bill him with his accent.
Well, how did they bill Lucy Lawless?
What a great question. Hard to know, honestly. For a very long time before I saw any interviews, I thought Lucy Lawless was American.
Oh, honey.
It's not like she has an accent on Xena.
No, or in Battlestar Galactica, actually.
Or in Battlestar Galactica. No, but like by then, at least I knew where she was from because I was actually watching interviews. But when I was watching Xena, I was watching nothing. No. Like maybe I read an interview and you can't read an accent. But I love the dancer who I looked up her name, Fabiana something.
Fabiana Odenio.
Yeah, who is actually like a former Miss Italy, which is so cool. Who is like still acting. Like she's in a TV series right now on Netflix, like not starring, but like she's sort of a side role, like opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Really?
Like, yeah, it's kind of nuts.
That's amazing. Yes, we have this episode where the A plot is Londo getting blackmailed by a stripper.
Yes.
A honeypot. Londo getting honeypotted, yeah. But we find out that, the dancer, she's not a stripper. She is a dancer.
She's
an exotic dancer. Who is
I literally wrote down burlesque show ?
Good enough. Close enough. I think that's
close
accurate.
enough.
Yeah. Who basically sold herself into slavery, probably because as we find out in Centauri society, if you don't have family or money, you have nothing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she had nothing and no way to support herself. Probably, honest to God, probably she did this to avoid going into sex work is my interpretation.
Yeah, that was my interpretation as well. Like finding a way to survive with like as little self-harm.
Yeah.
Oddly, because apparently, like the person who owns her or owned her was 100% physically abusive.
Oh yeah, yes. With his little electrical glove.
Electrical glove, yeah. Like,
Don't love that.
It was a hell of a power.
Although I gotta say, Londo's kind of abusive towards Veer.
Londo is not a good boss.
No.
It's a real like 90s work environment. Like you gotta work your way up kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, did you just ask what amounts to a personal assistant to have talks?
Right.
With another country?
He also screamed with another
planet
in episode 1. And I'm pretty sure straight
he throws things at him.
To the plate. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
I will say, and not to justify Londo screaming at Veer and throwing a plate at him in the first episode, but he was very drunk and upset and his nephew might be dead. So,
I mean,
mildly mitigating circumstances.
This is also just how Londo do, though.
This is how their society is.
Yeah, he's a complicated character.
Londo 100% found out some bad news in this episode and threw a vase.
Yes.
At a wall.
Very
the poor wall.
That poor wall. That poor rented wall.
I got the impression it was very, and this is what I sort of mean by that 90s sort of commentary of it felt very the Centauri feel very quote unquote passionate, which is usually just a terrible way to describe are they abusive? But they love hard, they play hard, they're also fairly violent. This weird 90s level of how people would describe certain cultures that just are a little extra.
Yeah.
And it just feels like that. Like, it feels like, oh, they're just Italian. They talk loud and they fight and they throw things. Or like they're Spanish and they blah, 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 blah. You know, like, and it's not like the show said it explicitly, but that's just, it's how it kind of comes off to me personally, which maybe I'm just reading into it too hard. I thought about it too hard. That was my problem.
I'm never going to get on your case for thinking about something too hard. It's the nature of the podcast.
It's true. It's literally the entire thing I've built around me is an excuse to think hard. But like this, like it only solidified for me when you actually see Londo and Adira together, because they're adorable together. Yeah. Like, Londo is sincere and sweet, and like, kudos to the show for having like a bald woman and making her sexy as heck, and then having Londo, who desperately needs a dentist at all times, also, you know, sexy and sensual, and like, you know, and it's like, obviously there's a power dynamic, you can't ignore that, etc., etc. But like, it was just it was really nice to even have him have insecurities, just being like, well, you're just saying that, you know, you're just saying that because I'm a politician and you have to, you know, you have to say these things.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to totally derail.
No, I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to. What do I want to say next? I'm going to talk about the hair. What do you think of this? The Centauri hair is actually, since we're talking about making a bald woman sexy, all of the Centauri women are bald because women have no status in their society. The hair is the height of the. Yes, they are literally peacocking. The height of the hair indicates how important they are and what their station in society is. That's why Deer has this little crest, and Londo's is out to here.
I have to say, it's amazing that the hair can stay where it is. Like, obviously, hair pieces upon hair pieces, and it's all fake. But, like, I stared at that first episode, and I was like, what magic, what gel, what 90s gel? Because 90s came out with some gels.
Yes.
That did this. But I like, actually, you know what it was? It was like the first time I saw them, that was the moment of like, this could be really Looney Tunes unless you make this serious very fast.
Oh, fair.
It's like, you know, like this guy wearing, like you said, the Bela Lugosi, like he's got a cape that flares and his hair's out to here. Like, absolutely, he's a joke.
And he's playing up the accent.
Yeah.
It's
you know, it's a complete joke unless you can actually give him something serious to talk about, which they did, thank God, immediately.
It's remarkable how fast you stop looking at the hair and the bling and the velvet.
Prosthetics and the
it's amazing how fast it stops seeming ridiculous.
Yeah. Which is, I think, honestly, was like an uphill battle for the show, and I feel like they handled it with aplomb. Like, there's nothing else I can, but the other moment that really clocked me was when he had that like hood up, and I was like, so what
happened to his hair? I thought the exact same thing when he was being sneaky.
Yeah, he was stealthing and he had this hood up that was almost down to his eyebrows, and I was like, okay, but where did you put it all? It just goes back. It not naturally that way? It gel?
No, it's gel.
Is it space gel?
It's space gel. It is space gel. There's I think that there's a scene at some point of Veer actually like touching up.
Absolutely, space gel.
There's a scene later on somewhere.
They should sell that.
Of Veer like touching up Londo's peacock crest.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I forget when.
Love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. But yeah, no, when he had the hood up, for a second I was, because it's a science fiction show. Yeah. How do I know it's space gel? Yep. Like, it could just be like that, you know?
Very true. Very true.
And so I had this whole moment of like, what, how, where'd it go?
The hair is a deliberate societal choice that comes up again, shockingly. It comes up a couple of times.
Maybe that's the title of this episode. The hair is a deliberate societal choice.
I was just going to go with space gel.
Space gel.
Space hair gel.
I don't know if it's space gel.
I don't know. That's pretty good. I'm sorry. I'm distracting us. No, but so the crux of the episode is, the honeypot. Adira has this super abusive slave master who wants her to get all these secrets. And she does because she drugs Londo. And he sort of talks in this half-drug state and gives her essentially the combination to his computer so she can get the files, which are what sound like dossiers on all the powerful families of Centauri.
Mm-hmm. I assume purple files, right?
Just dirt on all of the most powerful families in the Republic. Dirt upon dirt upon dirt that he's just been collecting as insurance.
Wait, Joy, are you not going to mention his triple cipher?
Wine, women, and song?
Yep.
Is that what it was?
Yes.
It was wine, women, and song?
It's wine, women, and song.
Insanity. I love that it's just him saying that.
Yeah. Oh, it's voice codes.
Triple cipher.
I read something earlier today from Tumblr that said something like, no one can convince me that Dionysus didn't just decide to live as a mortal for a few decades and it's just Jack Black.
Yes.
And I'm like, headcanon accepted.
Peter Jurassic as Londo Mollari.
But this is what I think of with Londo.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like it's just, this weird, almost top Roman romanticized Senate thing of you're laying there and someone's feeding you grapes, this ridiculous kind of thing. And if you're a politician and plugged into the rumor mill, you have all the dirt on all the other families, so no one can come after you. And so you can come after them if they mess you up.
Right. Yeah.
And she gets a copy. And then the hijinks ensue of Team Mollari and Sinclair just going full hog on this station. It was a real, what it reminded me of? It was a very unserious, Spock Kirk conversation about what Pong Far is. It was an utterly unserious version of that conversation where it was I can't tell you what is happening because it would be an international incident.
Yeah.
But you gotta help me, buddy.
I was absolutely thinking with my space junk and help.
Yes,
but
exactly.
That is that Sinclair agrees to help him.
Yeah.
If Londo does what Sinclair says in the trade negotiations that he's been trying to drag Londo to out of bed for days. Shout out to Jakar's very uptight new attaché, Kodath.
Yes. Who does not like getting hit on by humans, at least.
Very much does not like getting hit on and is very eager to prove herself. Mm-hmm. I love that both of the attachés end up doing the trade negotiations for their bosses because their bosses are flouncing.
Useless.
Flouncing useless. And the little, at one point, Veer is bored waiting for Londo and he's playing a little handheld game. And I just want to say, I had that. I had the game.
What? That exact game?
I don't know. Well, I don't know what exact game it was because those were actually those little handheld consoles were really cheap and common. But the color scheme makes me think that it was a little analog black and white cheap digital. I just said analog and digital in the same sentence. I know what I'm talking about. Little cheap handheld. No, but I know what you're talking.
It's like a Mr. Game & Watch.
Yeah, you could
like fishing
for
or something.
$5 at a gas station. Mine was Disney's Aladdin.
Oh, that's...
yeah, I had that one.
Yeah,
I had that one. I had a couple other ones too. It's like early ADD fidget spinners were these they were clunky and huge and took up space in your luggage if you were traveling somewhere. My backpack had 3 or 4 different things of these because they had 2 games on them.
They were the size of a trade paperback. So really big.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And then they just for the sake of the sci-fi show, they slapped some metallic tape on it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with a little antenna or something.
And then my favorite. Well, we'll get to, there are 2 other things before we get to the other serious. I know there's 7 minutes left. I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Okay. I just wanted to make sure we could talk about episode 3.
Okay. My favorite, there are 2 of my favorite lines in the entire series come from this episode. both ambassadors tell their underlings when they leave them to do the negotiations, don't give away the homeworld.
Yep.
Yes.
Which is just, I'm disturbed that you have to tell them that. 2, Londo, when Veer calls Londo after his booty call, and he is just, what do you want, you moon-faced assassin of joy?
Yes. It was a real, I'm hungover and you are loud.
The number of times I've quoted this in my own life is,
oh my God.
is not an insignificant number.
I also really love, one of my favorite tropes about a show with aliens is when aliens get American slang, human slang wrong. And I love the get your feet moist.
Yes, as the Earthers say.
As the Earthers say.
And then when Sinclair and Londo are looking for Adira and they go to the bar where she works, the dance club, and it seems to be run by alien Nathan Detroit from Guys and Dolls.
You're not wrong.
There's just a little he just looks like a gangster from Chicago with some weird eye makeup on, and he talks like one.
He might as well have been wearing a zoot suit with a fedora or a trilby.
He had a cigar.
Yeah.
And he was wearing a pinstripe suit and had a cigar.
I think I was so distracted by the additional makeup that they put on him. Obviously very much trying to make him an alien, but I was like, you literally could have just had a human in this role. Like, it didn't have to be, well, I guess he would have been Narn, right?
Joy,
well, no,
but space.
We're in space. Wait, what's the planet? Oh, crap. What is the Star Trek planet that ends up being full of gangsters? He's obviously from that planet.
Oh,
I'm not a good person to ask
hey,
this
listeners, get at us on Twitter for that one. I don't remember the name of the planet, but it was a very formative episode for me in terms of like, oh, that is a suit. Mm-hmm. We're putting everybody in suits because that's what we have on the clothing rack today.
Also, the only reason he couldn't be human is literally because then he would have known who Sinclair was.
Oh,
this was my other. It was a real like Superman problem.
Yes.
It was does not everyone know what the commander looks like?
No, it's like if you don't happen to live in a city where your mayor is constantly in the news for making terrible decisions, do you know what what your mayor looks like?
Yeah,
I mean, like, I don't know what the chancellor of like what what the
chancellor of your college looks like. Do you know what your sheriff looks like? Sometimes if they're not stumping for re-election, their picture is not necessarily all over the place.
Yeah,
and Babylon 5, the universe of Babylon 5 lacks an internet.
But they have Babcom.
They have Babcom.
And Joy, don't forget, he had his hood up, which, as you know, is the best of disguises.
And Sinclair took off his badge.
No, it was like a real Superman problem of like, oh, he's got a hood on and you can't see his long hair.
Yep.
So I guess we don't know. And I'm like, Malari is there like every night, bro. What?
That's true.
Do you not recognize the teeth, which are all over the place? How do you not see it? Sorry, go ahead.
No, the B plot needs to be touched on real quick.
Yes, the B plot of the Gold Channel keeps getting signals pushed out of it, and poor Garibaldi is like, what is happening?
These are command
He's trying to figure it out.
These are special command staff only at VIP access, and I don't know who's using these. This is
suspicious.
He is, and he's neurotic.
Yeah, and then to be fair, he's chief of security.
It's his job to be neurotic.
I also love that this is like his dog with a bone. It's like the tiniest little ping. It's not even a big deal, but I gotta figure this out, you know?
But then the second, like, now that he's paying attention, then the second one shows up and blips out of existence before he can get a trace on it. And I was just like, oh no. But yeah, when he finds out what it is, it turns out the lieutenant commander, Ivanhoe,
Ivanova.
It's still a bad pronunciation of it, so I'm like not going to get it right until 5 episodes in.
Yep.
It's like a bad pronunciation of a really nice name.
Yes, I agree. It is. I don't know if it was deliberate, but it's canon.
That's canon. But yes, who was trying to get in touch with what looked like a hospital or a care facility to talk to her dying dad.
And we find out that she has actually been estranged from her father for many years due to lots of family trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And her joining Earth Force against his wishes.
Yep. Her older brother was in Earth Force and he died in the war with the Minbari. And this was after her mother passed away. And her dad just shut down and stopped talking to her after she joined the military.
Yeah.
And that was the last time she got to talk to her dad. And they reconciled. They reconciled, and then he passes away on camera. And Garibaldi quietly deletes all of the error files.
Yeah.
And tells her it was just a gremlin, just a ghost in the machine like she told him it was in the first place.
Just a glitch, but everyone knows what we're talking about. It's a glitch, right? Right.
Totally a glitch. It's not going to happen again, right? Right. Okay. Honestly, I still, looking back on it, looking back on it from 3 days ago when I watched it, I was really impressed by the delicacy. Mm-hmm. He was just really kind.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And like, this is what I mean. Like, his character is a character archetype that I've seen before, but I just feel like they really got it here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if my opinion's going to change. I've only seen 3 episodes.
We're only 3 episodes in. We don't know.
We're only 3 episodes in.
Find out.
But I do like that he also has this like talk back with the commander about like, I hate it when you get heroic.
That's into my profits.
Yeah. Which is very good. But I feel like we're at one more things. Does that feel right?
Yeah.
To everybody?
Which, Ethan, if you want, Joy and I have had 2 more one more things. We've had 3 more one more things. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not
truly have to be one, and it can be silly.
You know what it is?
It doesn't have to be big.
Oh.
You have to think about it like Columbo. You know how Columbo's like, oh, one more thing, but it's actually 6. Like, don't feel bogged down by the fact that we say one more thing. It can be more than one.
No, wait a minute. Y'all go first.
Yeah, please.
So, in Soul Hunter, we find out that the reason this particular Soul Hunter went mad and decided to start killing people instead of just waiting for them to die, which is the standard modus operandi, is because the Minbari leader was killed. The Minbari leader was killed by humans. This is what started the Earth Minbari War. The Minbari leader's name was Dukat.
Oh yeah,
Sure was.
And if there's any Star Trek DS9 fans out there, you remember what I said about this show having a lot in common with DS9?
Yep.
Dukat in Deep Space Nine is the name of the former commanding officer of the station before it was taken over by the Bajorans, and he is actually the big bad of the entire show.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's been too long.
It's spelled differently. The one in Babylon 5 has an H. It's a KH.
Oh.
They didn't do that on the unless they did.
I don't think so, but I don't remember.
I don't think they did it on the subtitles.
Well, that's Tubi. So there's that.
And that's total accident, we think, or unclear?
Unclear. My personal opinion is that somebody like Straczynski pitched this to Paramount and they said no. Mm-hmm. And then they went, actually, we need a new Star Trek series. What do we remember from that pitch?
Yeah.
That is my personal, completely unresearched, I know nothing opinion.
In my opinion. In my opinion.
Right.
Don't come at, please, Paramount, don't come after me. I love Star Trek, leave me alone. Deep Space Nine is my favorite.
You've taken so much of my money. You literally have all of my money. You know, I would 100%, I mean, in my opinion, I would 100% believe somebody went, God, Ducat is such a good name.
Seriously. Yes. We haven't talked about the Vorlons. Ambassador Kosh. We see him in like one episode.
Oh, the glowy, the orb, the orb that goes into the robot.
Yeah.
Yes.
The orb that goes into the suit. Yeah. That. If I had let you watch the pilot, you'd actually know what the significance of all of that is.
Yes.
But just keep an eye on Kosh. He'll be back.
I love the glowy aliens.
I think my one note for that was something like, it's nice to see the Fifth Element aliens. Mega surprise appearance. Shout out to Fifth Element aliens. What up? Nice to see you here. One of mine was, which maybe this is something you can answer unless you're like, no, it's spoilers. I wrote down, I desperately want to know if Beta 9 was another planet in our solar system that had descended Centauri on it. Because there's this whole thing, like in the very first 10 minutes of the episode, where Londo says something like, well, we thought you were Beta 9, but you were Beta 12. It's a simple mistake. And I'm like, was that like Saturn? Or like Jupiter? Like Jupiter with all its gas?
No, that was the Centauri just trying to take Earth for a walk around the block.
That's fair. No, I know. I just wanted it to be something.
But that was an entire setup for a gas pun.
Maybe
the Centauri are indeed full of gas.
Yeah, you know what it was? Is I was honestly is what I was trying to figure out was how would an alien life form basically show up on one of our planets but have nothing in common with us? Because it's like, so it can't be carbon based. It can't be like, because they're not DNA relatives at all. So I was trying to figure out like what's the polar opposite of Earth, basically. To just be like, how do you even survive on a gas giant? The question is, I don't know. Do you? The answer is not. Probably not.
I mean, we don't know. The alien sector of Babylon 5 has different had different options for different atmospheres and pressures.
Yeah.
And
which I also love. Like you had to put on a mask and talk to
Yeah, I do love that they have basically an accessible for non-carbon based life form sector.
Yes.
I hate that it's called the alien section because then it still assumes that human is the default.
Yeah,
fair. Know. There's a lot that I was like, so this was mostly built by humans.
No, that's the.
No, I know, but
yeah, I know. But
humanoids.
Spoilers.
We're not.
Spoilers.
We're not going to say anything.
Spoilers.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
We should just call spoilers Beta 9.
Beta 9. I love that.
Beta 9. Which is not.
Can't talk about it.
Okay,
Beta 9.
The thing is, Beta 9 was not a spoiler. It was a MacGuffin.
No, I know. I know. But it was a mess around with you.
But it's funny.
It is funny.
Okay. Wait, Joy, was that your one more thing, or did you have something else also that you wanted to say?
I think there was a one more thing from both of us. Because I started
I
and
feel
Joy
like that
took
was
over.
my one more thing. I did already kind of talk about Babcom, but the thing I wrote down about it was that it's the perfect name for a video service.
That's
on the spaceship. It feels very. It feels perfect. It's a little bit like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has their logo on everything. I just like that the intercom system, when the engineers were putting it together, they called it Babcom, and there's something about that just makes my day.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, I have two really quick one more things. One of them is that what is her first? What is the lieutenant commander's first name again? Susan. One of them is just that I feel like I have to very quickly quote her, and the moment that I fell in love with her as a character. And it was when Winters was approaching her as she was just in the middle of everything that she was doing. And she doesn't want to give Winters a second of her day. And she just goes, I'm in the middle of 15 things, all of them annoying. And I was like, that. I know what that's like.
It's like when you find your self-insert.
I am in the middle of 15 things, all of them annoying. And I imprinted immediately. She's mine. I love her.
Susan Ivanova gets some of the best lines in this whole damn series. So you will be quoting her for the rest of your life.
Even that little throwaway line she has about having to go back to the handbook because of the definition of clear and present danger.
Yeah.
I like that she finds Garibaldi at her station and she's like, do you want to tell me what you're doing or should I just save time and snap your hands off at the wrists?
And then it happens again in episode 3 and it's just like a thing he does. Like,
yeah.
Dude, get off her station. Okay, I love her. I love everything about her. The second thing, my second one more thing, is that I wouldn't be myself if I weren't already trying to figure out who the OTPs are in this show. And this is all to say, I really don't feel like I have a beat on it yet, and I'm very excited to see the direction it goes. Garibaldi, very clearly cute with everyone, right? Like, we're going to find out. Then in my notes, I just feel like I had to share. There was one moment between Garibaldi and, I'm going to mispronounce Susan's last name again. Help me.
Ivanova.
Okay. There's a moment
pretend you're Marlena Dietrich.
Ivanova. Okay. There was a moment between Garibaldi and Ivanova, I think early on in the episode. And in my notes, I was like, ooh, little tension I'm sensing here. And then we got to a scene between Winters and Ivanova. And my notes there say, oh no, here's the tension. And
oh no, I found it. I know exactly the scene you're talking about too.
I was like, oh, and that's where I am right now. Still doing my research. I'm very excited to see.
I am going to be a politician here, and I have no comment. No comment to make.
Beta 9.
Beta 9.
I love that. I just love Susan so much. I feel like I can watch a whole show just centered around Susan. I want to follow Susan for one day.
One day.
When you have gotten a little further into this show, I have a piece of fanfic that I wrote about Susan's day that I will send you.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
I love that.
A day with Susan.
It was either a day with Susan or Susan desperately trying to enjoy a night off. I can't remember which. But it was her failing to do both because people just would not stop bothering her.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so good.
It's like outside of the commander, I feel like everyone has a demand on her time. I think that covers everything. I know there's a ton of trivia and a ton of probably lurker stuff that we haven't even gotten to. But there will be more episodes, so we can definitely take a look at all of that as well. If there's any other last minute things Ethan wants to toss in there.
I would just like to say for future consideration that there are 3 key dynamics that are established in season 1.
Okay.
You have Londo and Jakar, Susan and Talia, but also Londo and Garibaldi.
Which was one of my early ships, by the way.
And the Londo and Garibaldi one, the theme that kind of binds them together is the least obvious one. That I just find it that one is very interesting to follow because they both change so much. Everybody in this show changes. Nobody is the same. It's the mark of good drama. Nobody is the same when it ends as when they started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that's one of my favorite things, especially in a science fiction drama. It's and the writing is just so good. Like
it is.
I agree.
And the first couple of seasons, the writing, it's a little bit all over the place just because people, they're still getting their footing. But when you hit, I want to say end of season 2 into season 3, the writing becomes a lot more uniform because it's one guy writing the entire show.
Yeah.
Joe Straczynski took over writing largely the entire show after about mid-season 2 into season 3. And then with the exception of occasional guest writers, like Neil Gaiman.
Imminent Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman.
Can't wait. Okay, Ethan, is this where you share your socials, where you would like people to find you?
Yes, I am on Patreon. You can search for Ethan Quinsey, and I'm there. I'm on Blue Sky, Ethan Quinsey, and Tumblr, sure, if you want, as problematically named Gaslight Gallows. I should change it. I won't. It's mine. I'm not giving it up.
At this point, no.
No. I have a following.
Absolutely not.
All right, and if you're looking for more BachPod, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what do you think Spoo tastes like? You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/BachPod.
That's right. Tell your friends, whoops. Oh no. That's right. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time. Okay, now you can read that very long description.
For Spoo. What does Spoo taste like, Ethan? Tell us all.
So we actually have we were talking before the show. There's actually an quote-unquote extended canon answer, because this was asked. It was 100%. If I had been going to conventions at the time and been into Babylon 5, I 1,000% would have asked this question.
So it turns out there are actually two answers to this, and I will give you the long one first.
Okay.
Spoo. What is Spoo? Spoo is. Spoo are, the plural of Spoo is Spoo. Small, white, pasty, mealy critters, rather worm-like, and generally regarded as the ugliest animals in the known galaxy by just about every sentient species capable of starflight, with the possible exception of the Pakmara, who would simply recommend a more rigorous program of exercise. They are also generally considered the most delicious food in all of known space, regardless of the individual's biology, almost regardless of species, except for the Pakmara, who like the flavor but generally won't say so simply to be contrary. Spoo are raised on ranches, on worlds with a damp, moist, somewhat chilly climate, so that their skin can acquire just the right shade of paleness. Spoo travel in herds. If moving a total of 6 inches in any given direction in the course of a given year can actually be considered moving.
Oh my God.
They stay in herds ostensibly for mutual protection, but the reality is that if they weren't propped up against one another, most of them would simply fall down. They do not howl, bark, moo, purr, yap, squeak, or speak. Mainly, they sigh. Herds of sighing Spoo can reportedly induce unparalleled bouts of depression, which is why most Spoo ranchers wear earmuffs, even when it's only mildly cold, damp, wet, and dreary outside. If there is any life or death struggle for dominance within the Spoo herd, it has not yet been detected by modern science. Spoo ranching is one of the least regarded professions known. Little or no skill is required once you've got a planet with the right climate. You bring in 200 Spoo, plop them down in the middle of your ranch, and go back to the nearby house. Soon you've got more. When it comes time to cull the ones ready for market, the softest, mealiest, palest, most forlorn-looking Spoo of the pack, little physical effort is required, since they're incapable of rapid movement without falling over. See above. They do not resist, fight, or whine. They only sigh more loudly. When Spoo harvest time comes, the air is full of the sound of whacking and sighing, whacking and sighing. Even an experienced Spoo rancher can only harvest for brief periods of time due to the increased volume of sighing, which even the sound of whacking cannot altogether erase. Also see above. Some have simply gone mad. Spoo are the only creatures of which the Interstellar Animal Rights Protection League says, simply, kill them.
Oh, no.
Fresh spoo, served at an optimum temperature of 62 degrees Fahrenheit, is served in cubed sections so that they bear as little resemblance as possible to the animal from which they have just been sliced. Spoo is usually served along a Chablais or a white Zinfandel. Further information on the care, feeding, eating, and whacking of spoo can be found in the second edition of the Interstellar Guide to Fine Dining. As regards your desire to make and eat spoo at home, that depends on whether or not you ever want to have children later. Mm-hmm. As to what spoo tastes like, meat jello, served chilled.
Meat jello. The sighing.
The sighing.
The sighing. It's a real, you know what it reminds me of, like a Monty Python skit or some Ren and Stimpy-esque cartoon.
Yeah.
Of people going out to a field full of spoo with a giant cleaver, whack. Like, I can't. And it's like, I like that the description doesn't tell you how fast the sighs happen. So is it slowed down like 10,000 decibels? Like, is it a...
It's louder.
Yeah, it gets louder, but like I don't know the length. Hilarious description. I love that.
It's just a deep beleaguered sigh.
I love it. It's beautiful.
Deep beleaguered.
But now you said Monty Python. Now it makes me think of like the alien blancmange, the murderous blancmange. Literally
every sketch where they just started talking nonsense words after a minute, and you're like, what? Like, I understand some of the context of the things you were saying, but not the order of the words you said.
Yeah.
Hang on.
What is the shorter description? Oh, wait, sorry.
I combined it. The shorter description was the flavor. What does it taste like? Meat jello.
Meat jello.
That was my fault.
Much shorter.
What is it? Well, it ended up answering two different questions, which was what does it taste like, but also what is it?
What is it?
But yes. What is spoo?
And before we sign off, I just want to say, of all things, spoo comes back later and is plot relevant.
Yes.
in a later episode.
I love that. Love
it.
There are no throwaway lines in this show, I swear to God.
I also love that we didn't even get to really see what was on the plate. So, like,
it's white.
Question mark.
It's white. That's all it is white. You can see it on Jakar's fingers. It's like, it's yogurt, I think. Like the Doyleist interpretation is it's yogurt.
Yeah.
That's the prop. Or sour cream or something.
Like, how much percentage? How high are we right now? But
it's not how percentages.
Yeah, I'm going to silence my phone. Hang on. That was obnoxious.
Oh, that's okay.
Hopefully you guys didn't hear it that loud. I heard it very loud. I heard it like through my...
I didn't hear it, but while we're in this brief interim, that's probably going to be cut. My keyboard started randomly just typing the number 5 over and over and over and over again. So I've had to close my Word document and my notes document because it was just typing the number 5 over and over again. So I'm going to be very slightly useless for a second while I attempt to figure out what's happening here.
Good news. Good news. I'm here to vamp about my questions for Ethan so you can get your stuff under control.
If you all notice I've been suspiciously quiet for like a minute and a half, it's because all of my things started just being covered in the number 5. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. But anyway, questions about...
You work on that.
Yeah, I will work on this.
You work on that.
Questions about the monologue.